And in our work, in our field of work, when something is evident, it's called a disaster. Huh? We go there, and there's the bridge that has collapsed, and everybody runs. All the cameras go and show, and we say, what a disaster. Have we ever had a journalist or a crew running to the bridge that didn't collapse because we did our job? I haven't seen it. Today we're going to look a little bit of that. Let me introduce you to the first plenary of the day, the awards. Are we okay? Yeah. We are going to have a beautiful conversation about that, how to avoid disasters award, the Averting Disasters Award, and we will see this. We need to visualize the risk and the good things that all of you are doing that are not becoming disasters. And I want to introduce my friend Cara. Please, huge applause for Cara.
Thank you, Joaquin.
Cara is the head of Anticipation Hub,
Yes.
and is going to tell us how to bring the journalists to that bridge.
The journalist to that bridge. So, just maybe I would like to take a moment to appreciate the beauty of what we just saw from the performance. Again, this invisible beauty that we know our risk reduction professional friends, colleagues are facing every day. So talking about the journalist story, I started my work at the Red Cross in 2005. It was immediately after the Indian Ocean tsunami. I went 3 days after the tsunami to Banda Aceh. It was the hardest hit area for the tsunami. And I went in as an aspiring journalist. I went out as a curious cat. I asked myself the what if. What if? What if we could have done better? And since then, I have had the privilege to learn from a lot of people. I've worked in Indonesia, in the Philippines, and in Vietnam. I learned from farmers about trade-offs. I learned from mothers about sacrifices. I learned from my Red Cross colleagues about how to develop education material for children. I also work with national agencies to develop emergency operation centers, and also international colleagues working on advocacy. And I have also the privilege to see the results of their work materializing in many forms. I've seen emergency plans being implemented. I've seen disaster embankment being built and protecting villages from flood. But sadly, very often those successes are not well recognized. And that's why I'm very, very pleased to be hosting today this session on Averted Disaster Award. As Joaquin mentioned, the Averted Disaster Award, it's really about making the invincible visible. It's really acknowledging the successes in disaster reduction. I am therefore very pleased to introduce the wonderful people and brain behind the as Averted Disaster Award, David Lalemont. He is the head of the Disaster Analytics Society Lab based in Singapore at the Nanyang Technological University. He is also accompanied by also the brain, Marika Rabonza, who is the researcher, PhD candidate working on analytics and also supporting risk reduction in the region. So over to David and Marika to present the ADA.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Bom dia. Bonjour à tous. Thank you very much. All right. So, Marikar, as we practice, you run, you do a triple backflip, and I catch you, right? All right. So really excited to be here. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. I'm very excited to share with you some of the work and motivation behind the Averted Disaster Award. Quick note, I did all the hand drawings for these slides, but I am colorblind. So if the color of the ocean is purple or if the sun is green, that's not supposed to mean pending apocalypse. That's just I can't see colors very well. All right. So I'm not sure about you, but certainly for me, the past few years have felt a little bit like the proverbial dumpster fire. Here we are, and every day we keep hearing about the climate extremes and climate change making life more and more difficult for many communities around the world. We've been dealing with a global pandemic for the past few years. We have seen the impacts of major coastal floods, earthquakes that destroy our infrastructure, issues with water, clean water, lack of water, water security, volcanoes, typhoons everywhere, and financial upheaval. And all these events have impacted every one of us in various ways. But for those of us actually working in this field, all this understanding risk community, not only do we in some ways direct or some ways indirect feel the impacts of this, but we then have decided to spend our entire days thinking about these calamities. Part of my work is in fact thinking about black swan events. So the worst possible event that we could imagine, right? Events that haven't happened before. So essentially, I spend a lot of my days looking at the dumpster fire and imagining how it could be an even bigger fire, right? And that's pretty depressing. I would like to spend more of my time thinking about rainbows and unicorns. And in fact, there's a lot to celebrate in our work. For every catastrophe, there are innumerable examples of successes that lessened the impact of the catastrophe. Or even we don't know about the catastrophe because it was avoided, right? But this is really challenging in our field, right? I mean, as Joaquin mentioned, no one goes to the bridge that survived the earthquake. The news doesn't cover that. So if we do our jobs right, nothing happens. And in fact, our entire careers is to make sure that in the face of extreme events, nothing happens. And no one notices when nothing happens. It's the absence of something, right? But it's really important. Obviously, we need to learn from catastrophes. We need to learn from the glass half empty piece, but we also need to learn from the different ways that the glass is also half full. And now Marikar is going to talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, thank you, David. And that is very relatable. And thank you, Kara, again for the introductions. So I want to start by doing a little test with this beautiful audience here. So can I ask a show of hands of who has heard about Hurricane Katrina? Okay, I assume most of you, of course. How about Typhoon Haiyan? Still many hands. It's an expert crowd. But how about Cyclone Fanny? I'll show you an image. Okay, 0 hands. And okay, 3. That's amazing. This is an expert crowd. So Cyclone Fanny was the largest cyclone that made landfall in India in the past 2 decades. And it was, and Cyclone Fanny, oh, thank you. And the reason why that nobody knows about it, almost, except for the 3 people in the front, it's because there was this hugely successful evacuation program that resulted to almost 0 fatalities. And that's amazing because compared to this 1999 cyclone that hit the same area in India with the same intensity as Fanny, that is very little impact. And I think since the intervention, the evacuation was so successful, it didn't make much news. So this is one of the situations that we identified where successful disaster risk mitigation can be invisible, where the perception is that nothing happened. However, there is a need to highlight that nothing happening is extraordinary. Another situation that we identified where successful disaster risk interventions are made invisible is amid a true catastrophe. Because even in disaster, there are examples of success. For example, the image you see here is the 2015 earthquake in Nepal that caused widespread destruction and numerous tragic fatalities. However, even amid disaster, there are successful interventions that are important and deserve to be highlighted. In that example, for example, the government of Nepal implemented a school retrofit program where they improved the structural integrity of the school buildings. And during the 2015 earthquake, none of those retrofitted schools collapsed. For this example, people focus on the catastrophe. However, amid this catastrophe, there are still examples of successful interventions that deserve celebrating, and we should celebrate them. So now the next question is, these invisible successes in intervention, how do we make them visible? So what we propose is this way of thinking called counterfactual analysis. So this type of thinking is actually very natural in our everyday lives. People do it every day. And to do that, we have to ask ourselves, what if? What if things had been different? What if this specific intervention had been or was never implemented at all? What would have happened? And with that, when you do that type of thinking, suddenly nothing happening becomes extraordinary. And this type of approach, we formalized it analytically in my work with David, where we reanalyzed those previous hazards. For example, we reanalyzed the 2015 earthquake in Nepal, where in a scenario that the retrofitted schools didn't happen, and we also reanalyzed the cyclone Fanny, where the evacuation didn't happen at all. And for both of those cases, hundreds or thousands of lives were saved because of in those interventions. And that is amazing and should be celebrated. So, if you want to learn more about this method, we share this in more detail in our paper for the Global Assessment Report in the United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction, which we could share.
Thank you, Marikar. Maybe I'll just get the clicker back. Yep.
Share a clicker.
All right. And I think this is really the idea behind the Averted Disaster Award. There are so many amazing projects that people have implemented around the world that are truly reducing the impacts of natural hazards around the world. Nature-based solutions are reducing the impacts of floods in coastal communities. Early warning systems, there's an entire session on that later in this event, if you want to learn more about that. But those help communities prepare before disasters strike. Climate policies, we've already implemented some effective climate policies at various scales, and these need to be celebrated and learned from. Gender and socially equitable methods to understand and manage risk. In fact, I'll make a plug for a session we're running on the Focus Day on Friday on that very topic, if you're interested to learn more. Building more resilient buildings and infrastructure so that they don't collapse in earthquakes. Flood protection systems. Disaster risk finance mechanism. And I think there's another session about that as well during this event. Better methods to monitor and learn from natural hazards and their impacts. And through the Averted Disaster, we want to start building a database of these successful interventions. And part of the reason why we want to do that is that by learning from them, we can also help share them, scale them, reproduce them, adapt them in the various communities. in which they need to be implemented. So we're very excited to announce the Averted Disaster Award. It was launched last year. We received nearly 100 submissions, which we reviewed. And of those, we wanted to, I mean, all of them are amazing actually, and they're all highlighted on the website currently, if you want to learn about those. But we also wanted to highlight a few special ones that met the criteria particularly well. So the first one, we're going to show a movie about that. So I won't announce the winner just yet, but you'll see that in the movie. The other one, the kind of runner-up winner, they're the photography exhibit about that initiative, which I think is being shown over there. So we encourage you to also see that. Excitedly as well, if you go to the QR code here, today we're also launching the new round of the Averted Disaster. Important interventions that you know about that are currently being not recognized, but for which we can learn a lot from. So with that, I'm very excited to share a movie produced by the Water Bears Network.
আসসালামু আলাইকুম। বাংলাদেশ আবহাওয়া অধিদপ্তর ঢাকা 19 অক্টোবর বুধবার দক্ষিণ অথবা দক্ষিণ পূর্ব দিক থেকে ঘন্টায় 45 থেকে 60 কিলোমিটার বেগে বৃষ্টি অথবা বজ্রবৃষ্টি সহ অস্থায়ীভাবে দমকা অথবা ঝোড়ো হাওয়া বয়ে যেতে পারে। এসব এলাকার নদীবন্দর সমূহকে 1 নম্বর, পুনরায় 1 নম্বর সতর্ক সংকেত দেখিয়ে দিতে বলা হয়।
Bangladesh, a land of rivers, of water. More than 50 international rivers flow through this country before they drain out into the Bay of Bengal. Millions of people here live among the space between water and depend on it for their survival.
বিদেন জালমারে যাই চল
জামু
মাছ মারি এসে
চলো
মাছ আছে নদীর তার
যে 2-4টি আছে আছে
স্যারের কথাটা কি মনে আছে
মনে তো নাই
কিছু মনে নাই বাড়ি যেটি ভাঙিয়ে আনলাম ঘর তুলছি ঘর তুলিয়ে ঘর ছাড়ি টারি স্কুল গেছি সেটা মনে নাই
ওটা মনে থাকে ছোট ছিলাম অতটা মনে থাকে
আমার জীবনে আমরা 14 বার করে করছি আমার এইখানে যখন বাড়ি আছে এখান থেকে 14 বার করে গেছে হয়ে গেছে 14 বার ভাঙন দিছে আমার বাড়ি তো ওই দিকে ওই কালকে যে জায়গায় গেছি ওই জায়গায় আসলাম আগে ওখান থেকে ভাঙতে ভাঙতে এখানে আসছি নদী আমার জন্য তো বেশি ভালো নয় নদী খারাপ জিনিস ভাঙতে ভাঙতে আমাকে নিয়ে গরিব করে ফেলাইছে নদী
Bangladesh is one of the 10 most disaster-prone countries in the world.
ঘন্টায় 95 কিলোমিটার বেগে রাতেই দেশের দক্ষিণ উপকূলে আঘাত হানতে যাচ্ছে সাইক্লোন সিত্রা।
This is a country that owes its life to water. Floods swept over the land again this summer, dealing yet another blow to a community still reeling.
আমি তো কাজ করি কৃষিকাজ কৃষিকাজ তো আর সবসময় থাকে না মাছের সময় আসলে মাছ ধরবো আর যখন মাছ না থাকবো তখন ওই কৃষিকাজে যাবো 12 বছর বয়স হয়েছে তখন থেকে বাড়ি ভাঙা দিছে আর ওই ছোট বাচ্চা নিয়ে আবার মনে করেন ওই চর থেকে আর চরে গেছে নদী তো এটা বোঝে না যে ভাই এখন ছোট বাচ্চা আছে এটা তো ভাঙা যাবে না এটা হলো সব আল্লাহ দিচ্ছে
To counter the effects of cyclones and floods in the country, the Bangladesh Red Crescent Society is implementing forecast-based financing and early action to positively impact the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. BDRCS volunteers go into communities and collect data to make a list of the most vulnerable households.
ভাই কেমন আছেন
আছি আল্লাহ রাখছে ভালো
আমরা দুইজন আসছি হলো বাংলাদেশ রেড ক্রিসেন্ট সোসাইটি থেকে আপনাদের এই এলাকায় তো বন্যা হয়েছে তাই না
হ্যাঁ ভাই
তো এই বন্যার সময় আপনার বাসায় পানি কেমন উঠছিল
পানি মনে করেন 2 ফিটের মতো আমার
2 ফিট
Weather and climate forecasts are combined with risk analysis to predict when and where a hazard will strike. Once storm intensity reaches trigger levels, unconditional cash support is immediately released to families to take life-saving actions before disaster occurs.
প্রিয় এলাকাবাসী লক্ষ্য করে শুনুন সমুদ্রে একটি ঘূর্ণিঝড় সৃষ্টি হয়েছে ঘূর্ণিঝড়টি ক্রমাগত এলাকার দিকে অগ্রসর হচ্ছে তাই 5 নং বিপদ সংকেত চলিতেছে আপনাদেরকে সকলকে সতর্ক থাকার জন্য অনুরোধ করা যাচ্ছে সতর্ক থাকবেন নিয়মিত আবহাওয়া বার্তা শুনবেন প্রিয় এলাকাবাসী লক্ষ্য করে শুনুন সমুদ্রে একটি ঘূর্ণিঝড় সৃষ্টি হয়েছে ঘূর্ণিঝড়টি ক্রমাগত এলাকার দিকে অগ্রসর হচ্ছে
এলাকাবাসী লক্ষ্য করে শুনুন একটি সমুদ্রে একটি ঘূর্ণিঝড় সৃষ্টি হয়েছে ঘূর্ণিঝড়টি ক্রমাগত এলাকার
ওই 3 নম্বর সিগন্যাল দিলে আর আমি ঘরে থাকি না, সব গুছিয়ে গেছি নেমে যাই। আশ্বিন কার্তিক 2 মাস এইদের ভয় বেশি, কেমন সিডার এই পড়তে পারে, আবার ওই সব গুছিয়ে গেছে আবার ওই সাইকেল নিয়ে যেতে হয়। মাথা আশ্রয়ে স্কুলে যাবা, ঠিক আছে? ড্রেস পিনতে সুন্দরভাবে স্কুলে যাবা। স্কুলে কি পড়া দেবে তোমাকে?
বাংলা, ইংরেজি, ব্যাকরণ, বিশ্লেষণ। মা, তুমি কোনদিন জ্বর দেখেছো?
হ্যাঁ, আমি সিটার দেখছি, আইলাবিলা দেখছি। সিটারে যা ভয়ঙ্কর হয়েছে, হ্যাঁ বলার মতন না। তুমি জ্বর দেখলে কি করবা?
আমি জ্বর দেখলে সাইকেলে নিয়ে যাবো।
কিরম যাবা?
আমার নিজের জামা কাপড় গুছিয়ে, কোনো শুকনো খাবার থাকলে সেটা গুছিয়ে তারপর সাইকেলে নিয়ে যাবো।
আমার তো এটা স্থান, আমি তো এখান ছেড়ে কোনো যেতে পারবো না। আমার তো আর কোনো যাওয়ার কোনো তৌফিক নেই যে আমি এই জায়গাটা আমি একটু দূরে যাই, দূরে গেলে আমি বন্যায় কোনো ভয় পাবো না। আমার এখানেই বসবাস করতে হবে, এখানেই থাকতে হবে, জ্বরও দুধ খাইতে হবে, সাইকেল এনে যাইতে হবে, আইতে হবে, এছাড়া তো আমার কোনো উপায় নেই।
Unconditional cash grants can be used for anything the recipient family needs and help them prepare for the economic aftermath of the disaster. The money is often used to replace assets and to rebuild livelihoods lost.
এই আমাকে যে টাকা 4,500 দিছি না, 2500 টাকা আমি খরচ করে খাসি, একটা ছাগল কিনছি 2000 দিয়ে। ছাগলটা ভালোই আমার বাচ্চা দিয়েছে, বাচ্চা আমি বেচাইছি 5টা, সব শুদ্ধ এখনো 6টা আছে। তখন একটা ঠেকাত করলে আমি একটা ছাগল বাজারে নিয়ে যাদের বিক্রি করি, হয়তো খরচ করি খাওয়ার মতন জায়গা।
যেখানে আসলাম ওখানে একটা নদী ভাঙে যাওয়ার পরে এখন আবার দেখছি যে পঞ্চার ভাঙবো না, এটা একটা মনের কল্পনা যে এটা কতদিন থাকতে পারে। আবার আসি এইটা আর কি বাড়ি করছি।
আমার মেয়ে যদি আমি চাই যে একটা বড় উপর লেখাপড়া করি, বড় একটা চাকরিজীবী, একটা ডাক্তার, তাহলে আমিও তো একটু উপকার হয়।
দেখছো কি সুন্দর একটা সূর্য উঠেছে। আমরা যদি পাখি গুলো উঠতে পারতাম তাহলে তো ভালোই হতো। আমরা সারা জায়গায় উঠে থাকতাম। কালকে স্কুলে যাবি? তুই যাবি? হ্যাঁ। তুই বড় হয়ে কি হতে চাস? আমি বড় হয়ে ডাক্তার হতে চাই। তুই কি হতে চাস? আমি। কেন? মানুষের সেবা করার জন্য। তুই? আমি মানুষের সেবা করার জন্য। গরিবদের আমি চিকিৎসা করবো বিনা টাকায়। তুই? আমি আল্লাহর রহমতে যদি আল্লাহ ডাক্তার বানায় তাহলে। জি।
পাগলা নদী এই কি
তোর ধর্মের নীতি কত জানার ভাঙিয়ারে নীলেন গাড়ি আরে ও রে পাগলা রে গোরে এই কি তোর ধর্মের নীতি কত জানার ভাঙিলুরি বসুদ বাড়ি
Hello, hello. Okay, thank you very much. We're very grateful to have representatives of the Bangladesh Red Crescent Society here with us today to receive their inaugural award. So could I invite Professor Sarwar and Mr. Akram on stage, please? Woo!
Congratulations to Bangladesh Red Crescent Society, BDRCS, on this inaugural award. We know that many other communities can learn from this great initiative. Thank you for your work. A physical award is actually on the way. It's not here with us right now, but you will receive it very soon. But in the meantime, we say our congratulations, and let's give them again a round of applause.
Thank you again, David Marikar, for conceptualizing, implementing this award. It's really amazing. And I'm personally very excited that the Bangladesh Red Crescent Society won the award, firstly, because I knew them from, almost at the beginning of my work, working at the Red Cross. And Bangladesh Red Crescent has been really pioneering disaster risk reduction, community-based early warning. I would like to ask some questions to both of you. Professor Sarwar, maybe to start with you. You are a board member and also an academic. So what motivated you to develop a forecast-based financing?
Thank you. I'm the managing board member of Bangladesh Red Crescent Society, and as well as I'm the professor of disaster management and hydrogeology in the University of Rajshahi. Yes, your question is very much relevant for me. And I think that the Bangladesh context, when I will describe you, it is a disaster-prone country we have shown here. And it is also the climate vulnerable region from flood, from riverbank erosion, from heat wave, cold wave, as well as the cyclone and other disasters, all we have. Some parts of the country facing the arsenic problem, some parts of the country facing the scarcity of problem. But although we are the small country with the land area, and here the death toll and as well as the property loss is very high. It is hampering our country's development agenda annually. To achieve the SDG Sustainable Development Goal as declared by the UN, especially the goal number 14, the climate action for sharing the blueprint for peace and prosperity within 2030. It is very much essential for Bangladesh to address all these issues, especially the climate change effect and disaster hazards, related hazards in the country. We must work to reduce the less casualties happening for the flood and cyclone you have shown, and as well as the property loss. That is very important, and all these events must be addressed from the societal and economical losses, surely, and as well as we are observing all these losses as a humanitarian approach, with some humanitarian approach. And being a governance of the Bangladesh Red Crescent Society, I have a lot of scopes to work from policy level to field level. Those who are working in the field level, you have seen already. And I have, as academia, I have a lot of scope for our research and graduate, postgraduate students for some early action, for early action research work and other disaster research work. I think that ultimately all these efforts help us to work the anticipatory action for the vulnerable community and vulnerable peoples in Bangladesh. Finally, all these works are helping from government organizations and non-government organizations working there, including the BDRCS, to have a good connection, to prepare a good connection, a good relationship for the anticipatory actions. Finally, it is my opinion that all these actions is strengthening the capacity of the society community, as well as I think that community peoples will prepare themselves for their risk management. It is important for the risk management, and I think this will the responsible this approach, our approach, will helping the community peoples to cope with the new vulnerable situation. Last of all, but not the least, I can extend my gratitude and thanks to the organizer for awarding Bangladesh Red Crescent Society with some prestigious award. And I, from our community, especially from the Red Crescent Society under the leadership of our Honorable Chairman, Major General retired ATM Abdul Wahab, and other family members of the Red Crescent, I'd like to thank you again. Thank you all.
Thank you, and thank you for your leadership at Bangladesh Red Crescent. We're also working as an auxiliary to the government on anticipatory action. And I know, Mr. Ekram, you are really in the forefront because your department, the Disaster and Climate Risk Management Department of BDRCS, is really spearheading the work, working with staff and volunteers, developing forecast-based financing with the German Red Cross, the Red Cross Climate Center, the UN agencies and government partners. So I know a lot of people here and beyond are inspired by the work that you do in forecast-based financing, really trying to scale up anticipatory action in Bangladesh. So for the new actors, what is your message to them, Mr. Ekram?
Thank you, Kara. And of course, thank you, David, and also the associate. I'm very delighted today because the award, which is big one for the Bangladesh Red Crescent Society, it is a declaration of the humanity that the Bangladesh Red Crescent Society are able to get this type of award. This is first. And of course, I'm very much grateful to the organizer, to the selector, and also supported by the International Climate Center, International Federation of Red Cross, and of course the German Red Cross, those who are supporting us from the backside. As my board member said, I of course giving also thanks to our chairman who is guided us to do early actions. The journey is not the new. The journey has been started 2014. It is in Bangladesh. The first we started as a piloting forecast-based financing. And after that, nowadays we are successful. We have 3 protocols. One is early action protocol of flood. Another is early action protocol is cyclone, and other is early action protocol of heat wave. So I am very much grateful to our Red Crescent youth volunteer. As you observe in the video documentary, the volunteer, those who are very much strong, enthusiastic person, they are going door to door and award the people to minimize their vulnerability. And the early action inspiration in the Bangladesh nowadays, which is collaboration to the government as well. You know, when we started with the support of the German Red Cross, at that time, government also make it understand that the early action and also the financing, forecast-based financing is important. And finally, that early action and also the early response and other is incorporated within the government standard procedures of the disaster, which is the grateful achievement of the Bangladesh Red Crescent Society. That's what we are not the isolated. International Federation of Red Cross, German Red Cross, our partner, WFP, World Bank, every big partner are supporting us. Bangladesh as a community, the vulnerable community, we are not alone. Nowadays, again, this achievement will give our capital. And within this capital, we'll try to motivate the people. And maybe this is one of the tools other country also, they have also being their inspirations by this award. That's why, as a Bangladesh Red Crescent Society senior practitioner, because my journey in the Bangladesh Red Crescent Society and Red Cross Red Crescent arena, that was more than 30 years. So I was a practitioner, now I am the director, and I want to give something to the vulnerable community with the support of international community. So we are still, we're very much grateful to the audience, those who are very much supported us and fashion hearing, and this is a kind of inspiration for us. Kara, from my side, I'm also very much thanks to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you again. And thank you for highlighting really the importance of collaboration, and again, for sharing your experience. I want to talk about a call for collaboration to the UR community. But before I start, maybe I hand over to Marikar and David again to announce the exciting activities you have this week.
Great. Great. Thank you again, Kara. Thank you to the Bangladesh Red Crescent Society. I think that forecast-based financing and anticipatory action is hugely exciting. So as I said, today also marks the opening of the next cycle of the Averted Disaster Award, which we're very excited about. We have tried to make the nomination process as simple as possible, so you can just go to the website, nominate. There's a form to fill out. Very importantly, you do not need to have participated in the design or development or implementation of the project in order to nominate. So if you know of incredible work that others have done, nominate them. And I think that would be hugely valuable. The closing of the window for nominations is January 15th. The Averted Disaster Award has a booth, so we invite you to come visit us to learn more. When we'll also be doing a fireside chat at 6:15 today, which is supposed to be outdoors if it doesn't rain. So hopefully that can happen, and otherwise I'm sure there'll be a disaster plan accordingly. Thank you again, and I'll pass it back to Kara.
Thank you. Thank you. And yes, a call for collaboration. We, as Joaquin mentioned, I work for the Anticipation Hub. Anticipation Hub is a platform to support anticipatory action. It's established by the German Red Cross, the International Federation of Red Cross Red Crescent Societies, and the Red Cross Red Crescent Climate Center. And we bring together more than 100 partners from the UN, from the Red Cross movement, from NGOs, government, think tank, academia, and other network initiatives. And we are very pleased to see many of you with us this week at the UR. So again, a call for collaboration, a really short video. a very specific opportunity we have next week, just right after UR. On the 6th and the 8th of December, we will have the 10th Global Dialogue Platform for Anticipatory Action. Last year, the regional and global platform brought together over 2,000 partners, and we want you to be part of it this year. This year, we will talk about the lessons we have learned. Again, the great examples that we've heard from Bangladesh, but also a critical reflection of, are we getting it right? We will talk about investment and finance. We will talk about scaling up anticipatory action. We will also talk about informing practice through evidence and science. So please come and join us. And also we have a booth and some fireside chats activities planned. Please check out the booth. We have Melanie, Karen, and Juan in the team. Thank you, and back to you, Joaquin.